Chapter 6 of Widicker Woods. Let's pick up right where we left off and let's get straight into it. Here we go. Later, as they were conversating in the front room, they heard something else outside the same window. It sounded like something big was walking around. "Now what the hell could that be?" stated Joe. They heard grunting and growling. They looked towards all of the windows as lightning flashed. They saw a shadow of a giant creature. "Okay, everyone be quiet. There's something really big out there," said Joe. "I'll go check it out," said Pastor Toby. This time Toby walked to the window and saw the same giant werewolf they had escaped from before. It was feasting on Thomas's body right beside their window. If it had any idea they were in the house less than 3 feet away, Pastor Toby knew it would have no problem coming through that window, and they would all receive the same fate as that corpse of their beloved friend outside. Then another werewolf came from the dark woods, and as the new ones tried to sniff the corpse, the werewolf growled and they attacked each other and began to fight, biting and clawing each other, bumping into the wooden house, making the walls shake. Joe took everyone to the dining room, which had no windows. Toby explained what was happening, and Brandy gasped. "2 werewolves? There's always only been one that we know of. Was there anyone in y'all's group that a werewolf killed?" asked Mina. "Yes," replied Joe. "We lost a guy named Jake. He tripped and broke his ankle. The werewolf mangled him to death." "Now he has become one himself," said Mina. "That explains it. You know, you've lost a lot of men in your group. How many men you lose in the war, Joe?" asked Samantha. "It's a wonder how you even became a sergeant." "Look, it's easy to instruct someone to kill another man in war, but not when you're facing a beast, a zombie, or a damn vampire that can't be killed. I'm sorry I couldn't save your friend Thomas or Jake, but they wouldn't obey my orders, and that's why they're dead. My men obey my orders in war, and that's why I became a sergeant." Samantha said nothing more. Hours later, Mina told Joe that they would have to move along and find somewhere else to stay. "There are other shelters in the town of Widicker. I just don't know who or what may occupy them. I'm sorry, but y'all can't stay here forever. You've brought too much attention to our house. I suggest you leave now, since it's been pretty quiet outside for a while." Joe told her he respected her decision for her and her sister's safety. Joe gathered his group and explained to them that they had to go back out there in the woods. All the girls were reluctant to go. "I am not going back out there again. There's no way in hell. Didn't you see what was just out there, Joe?" screamed Samantha. "Yes, I know what's out there. I know it's dangerous. But me, Toby, and Tracy are going to do everything within our power to protect you girls. Now trust me," he answered them. Tabitha looked at Joe. "I trust you," she said. And besides, this is their house anyway. We've got to move on and get out of here and try to find a way to get out of Widicker Woods, or we'll be here forever." Felicia and Vanessa agreed. Samantha then looked at the window and then back at Joe and said, "Okay, I guess I just want to get out of these damn woods. Just promise me you're not going to let any of those things kill me." "I promise," replied Joe. Joe opened the door and hugged Mina and Brandy. "Please be careful," Mina told Joe. "There's another house a little past here. Now, I don't know if it's occupied or abandoned. I just don't know. Hope to see you again in another time and place." And with that, Joe walked out the door. "All right, guys, just like before, stay close and follow my lead." They began to walk through the trees and cobwebs. They could hear an owl in the distance hooting. They walked for what seemed to be hours. "Maybe we made it out of Widicker Woods," said Samantha. "I mean, we've been walking for all this time and haven't seen a werewolf, a ghost, or a vamp. But before she could finish her sentence, they heard a very light chuckle from close by. Joe motioned for everyone to be still. I think you spoke too soon, Sam. The fog began to reappear and thicken. Oh no, not again, said Tracy. Then they heard a voice that seemed to have come from all around them at the same time, that said, with an Irish accent, "You're in me woods. Would you like to play, lads?" The group looked around but could see nothing. The fog had nearly grown waist high. "Who said that?" demanded Joe. "Well, I did, lad," that voice replied. Pastor Toby walked a few steps forward and said, "Who are you?" The voice chuckled again and said, "Me name is Jekyll, and I'm a leprechaun." Joe looked at the others puzzled. "What the hell is a damn leprechaun?" asked Tabitha confused. "I'm a leprechaun, and I'm 477 years old. You shouldn't have come to these woods. You'll never get out alive." Okay, I've had enough of these games. Where are you, Mr. Leprechaun? Or should I call you Doer of Satan? Screamed Pastor Toby. "Why, I'm right in front of you, lad." Joe and Toby looked straight ahead and seen nothing but waist-high fog. "Ah!" screamed Pastor Toby. Something had very sharp teeth and bit his thigh, then swung its little hand with razor-sharp claws and sliced into the preacher's stomach. This made the pastor bend over and fall to his knees, blood spewing from between his fingers rapidly as he tried to cover his wound. He looked up to see a 3-foot-tall figure standing right in front of him through the fog. "I told you I was in front of you, lad." "Run!" shouted Joe. Joe, still not knowing what a leprechaun was or what it looked like, since he hadn't seen it through the dense fog, figured it must be invisible. And he saw no better option than to just run. So they did, and as they did, they heard the footsteps running quickly behind them. But again, when they would turn around and see absolutely nothing, they heard the leprechaun laughing, but since his voice seemed to be all around them, they didn't know which way to turn or where to go. They were all tripping over sticks and roots from the giant dead trees and running through the mud holes, since they couldn't see the ground. Then all of them fell into a 6-foot deep giant hole, and the leprechaun shouted, "Ha! I love to play games, especially chase, because I always win. Ha ha ha!" They laid there on the ground in the hole, still dazed from falling. They looked up at the ledge of the hole. They seen the giant moon shining. The fog began to dissipate. Then they saw the little leprechaun walk into view. "Oh my God!" screamed Vanessa when she saw his horrendous face. This angered him. "That's what you'll say when you all look at each other after I get through with you." He raised his razor-sharp clawed hand and prepared to jump down into the hole, when all of a sudden his body jolted and he gasped deeply, then screamed. His scream then became a gargle, and green slime oozed out of his mouth. His face contorted, and he fell face first into the hole with them. Everyone screamed until they saw a big stick protruding from his back. "Somebody killed him! Somebody's up there!" Joe began to lift the girls out of the hole one by one, and then he climbed out himself, and seen it was Pastor Toby who had stabbed Jekyll. "Are you all right?" asked Joe. "No, I'm mortally wounded. He's cut my aorta. But I've mortally damned him, because even if that little critter wakes up and somehow lives, I can die a little easier knowing that he's too short to ever climb out of that hole." Joe and Tracy leaned down beside him, and he looked at them and said, "I'm getting out of here, boys. Not the way I planned, but it'll do." His voice began to weaken. They began to see blood on his teeth as he laid there, taking his last breaths. Joe, like the Bible says, the shepherd takes care of his flock of sheep. This is your flock. And that was the last words he ever said. Where are we now? Asked Tabitha. I don't know, but I'm starting to think there's no other house in Widicker Woods. We've been walking for miles and we may just be running in circles, Joe replied. Look up ahead, said Tracy. What's that up there? They seen a gate through the fog in the distance. It's a gate, and I think there's a big house behind it. It looks like a mansion, says Felicia. I don't know about that. Remember what happened last time we found a house? Said Tabitha. Well, it's worth a shot. We're just sitting ducks out here. We've got to find shelter and find a way out of this place, Tracy stated. As they approached the gate, they seen that it was locked. Well, if it's locked from the outside, there shouldn't be anybody in there. We'll have to shoot the lock off, Tracy. Bang, bang! Tracy fired his revolver and the lock hit the muddy ground. The gates slowly opened on their own, and it made an eerie shrieking noise as they did. Well, let's go. He could see that Tabitha was scared, so he moved closer to her and put his arm around her waist and looked down at her and smiled. You can walk with me. I'll keep you safe. They walked on to see a huge 3-story mansion. It's beautiful, they all thought to themselves. There's a cemetery up there when you get closer to the front doors, said Tracy. Joe told him to have his gun just in case. As they approached the doors, they all had their eyes on the tombstones, fearing the worst. The image of what happened to Nick still fresh in their minds. They reached the porch and knocked on the door with the butt of their guns. No one answered. Abandoned, said Joe. Told you no one's been here in years. I guess this used to be a real town before it was just taken over by evil. They pushed the doors and they opened. It was very dark inside the mansion. Joe walked around looking for a candle of some sort to light. He opened the cabinet and found a couple of oil lamps. When he lit it, it revealed the majesty of the mansion. Large winding staircase, dusty marble floors. They saw a giant crystal chandelier, but the electricity didn't work. Most of the corners were covered with cobwebs. The house was still furnished and had portraits on the wall of the rich family that had once called it home. Dishes still on the dining room table as if they were getting ready to eat. Well, something happened here, and whatever it was bad because this family left everything in a hurry. Vanessa said as she looked through some expensive dresses and hats in the front closet. Yes, they were definitely in a hurry to get out because they didn't even lock the door. Tracy, you take the girls around the house and make sure it's safe. I'm going to go upstairs and check out the upper floors. Joe grabbed one of the oil lamps, but before he could walk upstairs, Tabitha stopped him. Be careful up there, Joe. I will. Stay with Tracy. Tabitha grabbed Joe and pulled him into her and gave him a long kiss. Everyone looked at each other. Damn, Tabitha, I know y'all loved each other, but I didn't know it was like that, Felicia said. Joe smiled and walked up the stairs alone. As he walked down the hallway, he sees creepy portraits of families that had past lived in the house. He held his lamp up to one picture. He saw it was a photo of a black woman. The picture was very dusty. He squinted his eyes and was about to blow the dust off, but before he could, he heard the voice of a female laugh. He was startled and shined his lantern towards the end of the hallway. Hello? Is anyone there? He pulled out his pistol. Answer me! Again, he heard a slight giggle from the dark hallway. Okay, girls, if y'all are trying to play some type of damn joke on me, now is not the time. I have a gun drawn. You hear me, Tracy? He began to walk down the hallway cautiously. He looked behind him for a split second, and when he turned around, he saw the figure of a woman quickly pass in front of him at the very end of the hall. "Tabitha, was that you?" No one answered him. He only heard footsteps that sounded like they were coming from the floor above him. This completes Chapter 6 of Widicker Woods. Please like, share, and subscribe for Chapter 7. And let me know in the comments below what you thought of this chapter. Until then, I'm Joe Jones. This is the Cup of Joe Show. And this has just been your daily dosage.